Hi everyone, welcome back to the course. In the previous section, we've learned some aspects reflecting language diversity. In this section, we'll introduce the last three. Let's first see what Pidgin and lingua franca are. Pidgins are formed and used when two communities that do not share a common language come into contact and need to communicate. This is very common, especially in trade or other business activities. Common pidgins based on English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. A pidgin has a simplified grammatical structure and reduced lexicon and refers mainly to a small set of contexts. It is about situational use. Pidgin languages possess two characteristics. First, they have no native speakers. Second, the linguistic and grammatical structure of Pidgin language is always simple and based on one or two other languages. For example, some Pidgin language is still spoken in Hong Kong. It is the mixture of Cantonese, the native language in Hong Kong, and British English. The meaning of how much dollar is expressed as you can see, this is the Cantonese. And how much dollar is Pidgin. How much dollar means how much dollar. Long time no see is a typical example of a pidgin used by early Chinese immigrants in the US and has been used by many people. Compared with the relatively low status of pidgin, a lingua franca is of higher value. A lingua franca is also used for communication between different groups of people, each speaking a different language. However, it is seen as a means of international communication and enjoys prestige among different groups of people. Today, English is considered a lingua franca because it has become the most widely used language spoken by non-native speakers. It is often called a global language that sustains communication in the world. Now, let's talk about idiom. Idiom is a group of words established by usage as having a meaning not deducible from those of the individual words. For example, rain cats and dogs. Indeed, idiomatic expressions convey a unique aspect of culture. They offer cultural understandings into societal standards, principles, and beliefs. Idioms allow us insight into the thoughts, emotions, and views of the speaker's cultural values. Sometimes we see that various cultures use a different version of the same phrase. For example, to live in an ivory tower can be found in more than 35 languages. Most of the time, we see cultural difference from the idioms. For example, in China, long is the symbol of royalty, good fortune, power, and even used as the symbol of China. If we look up the idioms about long in dictionary, there are more than 300 idioms, and most of them convey positive meanings, such as 龙凤呈祥, 望子成龙, 龙腾虎跃, 龙马精神, etc. While dragon in English refers to a very fierce, terrible, mythological beast and is seen as the embodiment of a monster in Western countries. Chinese are proud of calling themselves the descendants of Long. However, Collins' Corbeil English Language Dictionary explains it in this way. If you call a woman a dragon, you mean that she is fierce and unpleasant. The different cultural values decide the different meanings of the words. As a reflection of the cultural values, idioms provide a useful way to gain insight into different cultural values and their roots. Understanding the cultural meaning of idioms contributes to the intercultural communication. In this chapter, we have mainly talked about the definition of language code and the composition of language, the importance of verbal communication, the relationship between language and culture, the influence of culture on communication styles, and the diversity of language. Language is a relatively stable communication symbol system used by humans. In the context of globalization, language communication is inseparable from culture in intercultural communication. The various components that make up the language also receive cultural influence. What we have discussed in this chapter may help you to get to know verbal communication more comprehensively and deeply understand the inseparable relationship between language and culture. Realizing how to adjust our language to others can often be helpful to be aware of our own communication behavior when interacting with others.